Hey, all you musical Innertubers out there, we've said it before and we're saying it now. We'd love to hear from you.
And there are so many ways to contact us. For example, you can do what Tom Haywood did. Leave us a voicemail.
Your episode on Henry Mancini was just fantastic. Loved it. You should be very proud of that one. Keep up the good work.
It's easy to do. Just go to our webpage, musicalinnertube.com, and click on the orange microphone in the lower right corner of the page. Then, click on the orange bar that says Start Recording.
Also on our webpage, you can click on Contact at the top of the page to leave us a message.
Or on that same top bar, click on Rate the Tube and tell us what you thought about one or all of our shows.
And you can always send us an email at musicalinnertube@gmail.com.
We'd love to hear from you. As Tom Haywood says,
Talk to you soon.
Hi everyone, I'm Don Rooney.
And I'm John Timpane.
Welcome to the Musical Innertube, the podcast born out of a mistake.
We once meant to introduce a soothing musical interlude, but we said soothing musical Innertube, and the name stuck.
On this podcast, we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives, jobs, hobbies, and passions.
Difference makers who really make a difference.
The Musical Innertube welcomes back a great friend of the podcast, a man we've had on several times before. As in previous episodes, we will call him Mykhaylo. Born in the USA, Mykhaylo served long and honorably in the U.S. military. But starting a few years ago, when Russia began to attack Ukraine, Mykhaylo has been traveling to that besieged country, assisting the Ukrainian military by teaching soldiers battlefield medicine and guerrilla tactics. And with each visit to Ukraine, he has grown closer to the country, the people, and the culture. He's recently returned from one such visit, and he goes back to Ukraine in a month or so for what will be his 9th deployment. He's our expert, indeed eyewitness to what's going on in a war that, depending on how you count, is either in its 10th or 3rd year. A very warm welcome to you, Mykhaylo.
Dober den, brats, which means good afternoon, brothers.
I love the fact that the language that you're learning, because you're learning some Ukrainian, it's very loving and very familial. The greetings that you give me, I figure, are the greetings that you give people on your deployments, the people you work with behind the lines. And I'm just wondering if that's the case. Is it the case that that's the kind of language that is used among the Ukrainians on the battlefield?
It's my opinion it's the most beautiful language in the world. And I'm half Italian.
So give us your sense of the sudden turn that the war has taken. Ukraine struck across the border recently into Russia, catching the whole world, I think, by surprise. And after some desultory rocket exchanges, Russia yesterday hit Ukraine with a ton of rocket fire, attacks on the power and energy grids, including several important cities. I'm just wondering what you think militarily and tactically is going on. First, why did Ukraine go into Russia? And secondly, is Russia softening the country up for a larger occupation? What do you think?
First of all, everything I'm going to tell you, you can find open source. Just Google it. And anything that I shouldn't tell you, I won't.
Fair enough.
Yeah, good idea.
So I think it is open source that their DIU, Defense Intelligence Ukraine, planned this thing, and they've been planning it for a long time. I knew that they were in the planning stage for something. It was extraordinary when they told, we're probably going to take over some Russian territory. And it's like, oh, really? And I'm sure there's, whatever two people in all of CIA or the United States they can trust, they confided, this is what we're doing. Same with British MI and definitely nothing in Germany because we don't trust them. But so from what I see on open source, it looks like a brilliant maneuver. The Ukraine has no interest of ever keeping any part of Russia for any period of time. They just want to keep their country free. And, they have to jump through some hoops on permission to even do anything across the border of Russia. Must have gotten some of that. And so I know some friends that are actually there, because most of the soldiers didn't even know they were going there until a couple of days before, because people leak and they get on Facebook and other stuff. So, by the way, I am not on any social media, and I never will. But I do have surrogates there, so if somebody dies, they'll tell me and stuff like that. So, in my opinion, but not my exclusive opinion, this is going to be a bargaining chip for negotiations to get back all Ukrainian territory, the Donbass and Crimea, which has belonged to Kiev for over 1,000 years. Even under the Mongol hordes, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and finally, many centuries later, Russia, Catherine the Great, and everybody after her, and whenever it changed in Russia, they were a vassal capital, but they have always owned Crimea. They have always owned the Donbass, and there is no possible way Ukrainians can possibly forget that. No matter if Russia somehow manages to take over for a little while, it'll be short-lived. The steppes of Ukraine, most fertile ground in all of Eastern Europe, breadbasket of all of Europe and probably the world, most fertile soil, which I just happen to have some. This is soil from the steppes of Ukraine. See how it looks like coffee grounds?
It does.
Mykhaylo is holding up a plastic bag full of what looks like soil.
It looks like the kind of soil you don't need fertilizer for. But anyway, so that's, I believe, the purpose of this mission. Meanwhile, as you will also find on open source information, Russians, a lot of them evacuated immediately, so they didn't get killed by Ukrainians in their mind, but most of them didn't go to Russia. They went to Georgia, and you can find that open source. The ones that remained, some of them have praised Ukraine, thank you for liberating us, and amazing things, and said not so nice things about Putin, like Putin Julio and some other things, and Slovo Ukraini, which means glory to Ukraine. These are the residents of Kursk. You can find it open source. I know it's been reported that there was one strategic advantage of this maneuver. They immediately took over the train station. They have a lot of computerware on supply lines in and out of Russia. So they now have control of all the information about where Russia goes, out of Moscow, out of St. Petersburg, wherever, throughout Ukraine. I'm sure it's only temporarily, intelligence useful, because they'll change all that. But that was a very smart move going to Kursk. There is another strategic advantage that I'm not sure is on open source yet, but it was a brilliant move, in my humble opinion.
We've also heard that Kursk, or that area, was where Russia was launching a lot of its missiles towards Kyiv and other cities. So was that another reason to move in there, is to kind of knock down some of that rocket fire?
Well, it looks like it to me. There's another strategic reason. I'm sure Putin and President Zelensky has read The Art of War by Sun Tzu, right?
Yeah.
So you hit the enemy where they're not at the moment. And so, they, as far as I know, have locked it all down. Putin has recently, also open source, changed his mind about 3 times on what to do about it. He actually told the Russian people 3 days ago, we are not doing anything about it right now, so this is the new normal. It's only temporary. We'll get it back someday. But he didn't want to pull any forces out of the Donbass to distract, because A, they would all be killed, and B, it takes away from his main objective at the moment. He changed his mind on that yesterday, open source. And so he is sending some forces there, and good luck on that, Vlad.
Do you think that the Ukrainian forces are planning to stay there and wait for the Russians to come? I mean, what do you think? I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that, but perhaps you have some ideas.
Well, like I told you before, I'm not a prognosticator of the future. So, but knowing the guys I know that are there, and some women that are serving, they'll, when it comes time to get their country back, I believe, in my opinion, that they'll give it back. They don't want to keep that land, but they're not going anywhere until they get their country back, in my opinion.
There had been some, over the last 6 or 7 months, some Russian advancements and some Ukraine pullbacks, especially in the east. Did that kind of dampen the political and just the general feeling there in Ukraine about the war? And did this little incursion kind of ramp that up a little bit?
I think the answers to that question are yes and yes.
Okay.
About 5 or 6 months ago, I thought I might be on my last deployment, because my Ukrainian friends, who a year before, Razom, we win, we're going to win, it's just a matter of time, we're starting to lose a little bit of hope. And it's taken a little while to get that hope back. And the reason is because America turned their back on them in their mind. Remember the $61 billion that we all sat on for 6 months, and then Republicans, whatever. And then so I'm like sitting on a bus with about 30 Ukrainians that I'd never met to go to a conference, and there are a lot of them post-traumatic stress. And we all knew some people we knew. And I'm sitting with a doctor named Andre, and he goes, "This is bullshit. These are all condescending. Nobody cares about us." And I said, "Okay, Andre. So yeah, we're going to lose this war to the Russians." And I'm like, "Andre, you're not telling this to other Ukrainians, are you?" And he's a medical doctor, and he goes to front lines. And he said, "Well, it's because your country is not helping us anymore. Most NATO countries never gave us enough supplies, and the Russia's going to take us over." And I said, "Andre, so what are you going to do after this conference?" "I'm going back to front lines. I'm probably going to die there." I go, "Okay, but say you don't die there and Russia does take you over. What's your plan after that?" "I will attack every Russian checkpoint until they kill me." And it's like, okay, that's not a good plan for your life and your family. And
Yes.
And I'm thinking, well, if they're giving up hope, what am I doing here? That changed after, a Republican named Crenshaw, former Navy SEAL, and a couple others they're still Trumpers to this day, voted, well, we don't want to go down in record as voting the wrong way. And that's because those in the know realize that Ukrainians keep track of history better than we do. There's Ukrainian SBU, their version of the FBI. They record every vote in our Congress, all of it, so that it will go down in history. Did you support Ukraine and save all of Eastern Europe and probably Germany and Western Europe, like we should have done 3 years before World War II? Or will you go down in history of losing it all and going to World War III? That's where we're at right now. We need to win this war decisively, and we need just a little bit of help because, there's a few guys like me and some others you may know that, are good fighters, but Ukrainians are the best, and they just need to have supplies to be able to protect their country in this completely black and white, no gray area war, defending their sovereign homeland. And it can be done in a month and a half. You may know I served in Iraq and various other places, there are 6 Arab countries plus Pakistan. And, we locked down Iraq in a month and a half because we were well supplied. We had 45 countries helping us, not just NATO countries, but Ukraine itself sent their best special forces for us into Iraq. And you may remember George Bush landing on an aircraft carrier a month and a half after we left the borders of Kuwait and up the KAA and everything. He said, oh, mission accomplished. That can happen right here in a month and a half if we get the right supplies. And then we're done. You know, who knows what Putin's going to do after that? He'll probably find some other reason to do something. But we need to get rid of the effing Russian orcs. They need to be gone. And it's possible. But we don't need pandering. We don't need, especially Germany, who has now come out in favor of Russia, my understanding, just checking the box. The only thing that Trump has ever said about Ukraine that makes sense to me is that these NATO countries should be giving more money to helping supply us. Poland, as far as I can tell, is the only one that is rogered up. And I go in and out of Poland on my way to Ukraine. I love the Polish, and I know some Polish Grom, and they're the only NATO country I know that is doing what they should be doing to keep themselves from being taken over and protect all of the Baltic states. So Trump has that part right. But unfortunately, he doesn't understand geopolitics. And it's not any American's fault that they don't appreciate Ukrainians like I do, because I'm a legal resident there. I know hundreds of Ukrainians personally, friends, brats, sisters. So I get that. But he should understand what Nikki Haley understood when she ran for president in the primaries, which is you don't want to be on the wrong side of this war, especially if you're American. Because we're the biggest policemen of the world, whether any Democrat likes that or not, or whether Trump likes it or not. Yeah, it's just the way it is. We are the British Empire prior to World War II, and we're blowing it if we're, fiddle farting around and, we're killing Russians 5-1. But that's not a good trade. That means for every 5 dead Russian soldiers, I'm losing one good Ukrainian brother. And it needs to end. All people in Ukraine and most in Russia want this thing over. We want peace. I'm honored to live with them in genocide war, which is horrendous. But I want to live with them in peace, and it's possible. But it's only possible if we stick to the goal.
I heard, I guess it was something on NPR recently where they were talking to a military strategist and said, this incursion into Russia by the Ukrainians, does that set back any possible peace talks? And the military expert said, actually, no. A lot of times when you find peace talks happening, it's after an aggressive move. So I'm assuming that you're going to agree with that.
Totally. And I'm guessing that war criminal Vladimir Putin understands this too, because the negotiations that they were talking about, and Putin said, oh, yeah, it's time to negotiate, and we'll get all our troops out as long as we keep the margins of whatever we own now. He doesn't own anything. Ukraine still owns that territory, and nobody should have any delusion about that. So yeah, this definitely strengthens the hand of President Zelensky to, finish this the right way. He actually made something, 2 months ago that actually sort of makes sense. He would consider splitting the territory of Crimea with Ukraine, mostly meaning that Ukraine would still pay all the money to manage it like they have for 1,000 years. And he could still have some access to the Black Sea or something like that. And no Ukrainian told me to say this, but it does sound like a rational plan. Just that part. Donbass has to come back to Ukraine, lock, stock, and barrel. But if that was possible, and I don't trust anything Putin says anyway, and neither should anybody else, but, 10 years ago, friends of mine would go to Crimea on vacation. one of the places I would love to live is the Ukrainian Black Sea shores of Crimea.
Oh, yeah.
And they would party with Russians who just want to get along. Budmo, Nostrovia, beautiful place, my understanding. Now, I've been on the Black Sea shores of Odessa, which are very beautiful and everything, but Crimea is a vacation capital, and there's oil there. So, they were always sharing the oil prior to Yanukovych anyway. And okay, as long as it was a shared agreement and all Ukrainians have free access to Crimea and whatever Russians. So I don't know, but this is my opinion. It's not shared by any Ukrainian friend of mine. They want their country back, 100%. And I totally agree. The Donbass has to come back to them in reality. And I'm sure they'll give back Kursk, So, but this is my opinion, just my opinion.
So you've worked with many different aspects of the Ukraine military, Mykhaylo, and I can't get to all of the alphabet soup that I just started learning this morning, but there are two organizations that you've worked with that I want to talk about. One's going to be the House of Ukraine in just a minute, because our listeners should know that Mykhaylo, when he goes back to Ukraine periodically, which he's about to do in another 4 or 5 weeks, he brings stuff with him. So we're gonna hold that in abeyance for a moment and ask him to talk about what it's like to work with some of these units. First of all, I'd like you to comment on the Azov Brigade. I know they're part of the offensive guard. I know some Americans might know that they've gotten some bad press for by Putin, right? Being called a Nazi revanchist organization and being responsible for human rights violations. But you've actually worked with them. What's your impression of these guys? And what's it like working on the ground with the Azov Brigade?
Galablu Azov, which means I love Azov. I trained their entire unit in Kiev 9 or 10 years ago on their territory. I still train them in onesies and twosies and some other training we run all over the country. And I serve with them. So there is no more core patriotic Ukrainian fighters, Cossacks basically, but at a higher sophisticated level now than they ever used to be, because they are now not just some militia. They are part of their MOD, Ministry of Defense, Army Brigade, whatever. And the Nazi thing, give me a break. Yeah, I guess their insignia sort of looks like a swastika to somebody. But who's Putin to talk about Nazis? He's the Nazi. He's the Adolf Hitler, or one of the Adolf Hitler. They are simply freedom fighters for their own country. They all have families, and they're actually, some of their forces are now special forces, every bit as good as the Army Special Forces, who I've also trained and worked with.
Okay, let's talk about the House of Ukraine.
Sure.
You're going to be taking back with you medical supplies and other things. Talk about the things that you will be taking with you that you can talk about back to Ukraine this time.
Number one on the list is tourniquets. Combat application tourniquets, the most universal tourniquet in the world, which we're running out. There's a couple of Ukrainian tourniquets that are adequate and they've passed. But this is what they want because it's shared by NATO forces. Along with that, and almost as important, is training tourniquets, which are identical to the frontline cat, just a different color, so you don't mix it up. You shouldn't train with your frontline tourniquet, because even after 100 times, this will eventually start to break. So, training on a tourniquet is critical. Learning how to take it off is just as critical within 2 hours, but that's a whole nother story. So that's, if I can get enough funding, a couple hundred of these is what I'm bringing. Surgical cripe kits. I've already distributed 2 to 3 to every 9 training centers I certified but this is the best one on the market for training because it's all nice and tactical and you can put it away.
And what's in there?
Standard supplies. So you've got a number 10 scalpel. So you can make your first fine stabilized slices of bread, punch cut, to get into the trachea at the cricothyroid membrane. This is the best airway on the market. It's in several other cric kits that are more expensive. And then a cric hook so that you can lift up the cricoid cartilage and drop this tube quickly, all within 30 seconds, if you're trained correctly. This is a number 10 cc syringe, and it inflates this cuff here on the airway. And these are the main ingredients, and this is a way you can secure it, although we teach them all kinds of improvised ways of doing it. This is the right thing for training because it's not sitting in some surgical tray out of a hospital with a scattered bunch of stuff. It's like you will have it in the field. I've got a lot of anesthesiology friends who have never done a cric in their own ER, and even if they did, they would have a lot of help with a nurse, with a lot of light and everything. We train them to be able to do it in the dark by themselves, and we now have 100% success in case studies. We can't do scientific studies there of people doing their first cric 100% successful. And I can send you the pictures of 5 of those, which will be written up in a journal article here in the next, month or two. So cric kits, I'm bringing at least 6 of these because I've already brought 50 of them. There is another one on the market that is a little more bulky, which is why I won't carry it. But it has it's called a bougie tube. So if you can't see where you're going, you can do another thing. IFAKs, individual first aid kits, high quality, not cheap junk out of China, but another cap tourniquet here, wound packing, hemostatic agents, scissors for stripping and flipping, and that's the kind of stuff. It's probably going to come up to about $5,000 or $6,000 on this trip. And I'm glad you brought it up because I think you were going to put the strip on how you can donate, right?
Yes, we're going to. We're going to put the House of Ukraine link up on our website. So if people want to donate, they can. And this is for battlefield medicine. This is for keeping people alive, clearing airways, getting them to breathe. And if they are wounded, helping to pack wounds, helping, things like tourniquets seem like such an obvious thing, but these are the best that you can have down on the battlefield.
And House of Ukraine is part of the Ukrainian diaspora for 60 years. It's a cultural center in a place called Balboa Park, where there's a House of Korea, House of all kinds of other houses, cultural centers. There is a House of Russia there too, but every time I go there, it's been padlocked for years. So anyway, that's their main function. 100% of the money goes towards supplies for Ukraine. And it's all tax deductible. So that is one of the main reasons I agreed to this interview, is to advertise for my Ukrainian diaspora. Right now, I think for this package of what I showed you, we're up to about $2,000, and we need another $3,000 or $4,000 before I leave. And if we don't get it all, I'm going to kick in my own private money, tax deductible, along with a couple other people at House of Ukraine, because I have to have it in the next week or two.
All right. So again, go to the website, look on underneath the flag of Ukraine, which is what the picture will be, and you will find the link to the House of Ukraine, and you can send whatever you can, but it'll help. It'll definitely help on the battlefield. And it's not, again, for people who say, I don't want to contribute to war and I don't want to contribute to killing, this is the opposite. You're contributing to saving lives on the battlefield by helping out with these medical supplies. So thank you. One
more thing I'm going to bring with me that you don't have to pay for. This is called an AAJTS. It's approved by the Committee on TCCC. I know
it looks like a big belt.
What's that?
It looks like a big belt or a fanny pack.
It is. It goes right over your umbilicus, your belly button. And it's the only thing we know of that can stop lower aortic bleeds, because we can stop everything up to the junction of your femur or your humerus. But if they're bleeding internally from an aorta bleed, this is the only thing that will stop it. They've now been distributed to American military, but I don't know of anybody outside of Ukraine that's ever used one. Inside of Ukraine, we've used it at least 7 times that I know of, 100% successful. And luckily, these are like $600 a piece. I've distributed 2 to every of my 9 training centers, 1 for training, the other to front lines. And now I'm bringing back another 6 or 8 or whatever they're going to send me in the next week, because as soon as they go to front lines, we need to, resupply. Just thought I'd let you know.
Taking a slightly different tack, I know that as the years have gone by and your service to Ukraine has gone by, you have become closer and closer to the people and the culture. And you were telling me a story that I'd like you to share with everyone about your introduction to nothing other than opera. One might not think of opera in a case like the war in Ukraine, but it is part of this turn to the arts that one sees in Ukraine. The BBC just ran a big overview of how the arts in Ukrainian culture have attained a new importance in a country where they were already very important. So how did you learn about opera?
Well, I learned about it 10 years ago, and I took pictures of one of the most ancient opera houses in the world in Kiev. And so, because it was a landmark and I'm into cultural stuff, I took pictures of it 9, almost 10 years ago. There is actually 2 other opera houses older than that, one in Lviv, one in Odessa. But as you well know, because you're a much more cultured man than me, the Kiev Opera House is known throughout Europe. It's very famous. So my fiance, and I've never been to an opera in my own country. I've never been to a ballet in my own country. I've gone to rock operas, but, I just, most Americans just don't go there. Well, my very well-qualified master's degree, going for a PhD medical colleague, said, "Oh, you want to go to ballet?" Okay, at the Opera House. And it was the Faust Ballet. And I think when we were in high school, John, we studied Shakespeare all the time. And it's probably a Shakespearean play. No. She educated me, and I'm thinking, oh, no, it's going to be in Ukrainian. I'm probably going to fall asleep. So I go, and it's like, oh, my God, how could they be so good at this craft in the middle of a genocide war? They are more sophisticated than we are culturally in places like Kiev, Odessa, Kharkiv to some degree, and Lviv. And I was like, there was no falling asleep. And she checked on me just in case. And it's like, wow, and they like the Faust Ballet because in their mind it sort of is about Putin, not just Satan. So I'm sure you know it very well. And it's like, whoa, 2 days ago, I was muddy and dirty and could have been killed, and I'm sitting here watching a ballet. Okay, so next trip, we can go to opera, real opera. And, okay, and I'm with her father, and we're drinking vodka that he made, and, we both kind of chuckling, translated into, I hope we don't fall asleep at the opera, And he takes his wife, and we go, and it's Traviata. So once again, it's like I am in another world all of a sudden, and they kind of have little translated stuff in a few languages above, and it's like, I probably should have gone to all this when I was in the United States, but it is much more meaningful there because they do restaurants better than we do. When there's time to go to them. Their food is better than here and a lot cheaper. Cultural events, they've got parks and forests that are incredible. So there's one of the reasons that I will always live in Ukraine.
Well, Mykhaylo, the frequent moments when you get choked up and emotional let us know the depth of your commitment to Ukraine
I was trying not to let that out because I'm
well, that adds to the amazement of this story. Is here's a guy who, like us, is years old, and he is putting his butt out on the line, and no doubt about it, you're one of these guys who runs toward the shooting, Mykhaylo, and it's simply an amazing life story. And if the war is concluded somehow, I guess you're going to move there.
I already am a legal resident of Ukraine. And I guess in the last few months, they're going to give me a pathway to citizenship. But I've got a couple residents in Kyiv area, and they accommodate me wherever else I go. I do live there. I live there most of the year. I only come home for a few weeks to resupply and then get back there because, I missed the Kursk occupation in the beginning stages, and I feel like I'm leaving my Ukrainian friends. And I'm at no more risk than any other Ukrainian that just comes home, including the warriors that sometimes I serve with. Okay, they get a vacation, they come home, and they get bombed in all the big cities. I think I told you, you might have heard about the Children's Hospital. They got bombed by a cruise missile, deliberately attacked. I went to that for an hour or so because it was a couple blocks from where I was. And prior to that, I saw, like, in the middle of the day, 6 or 7 cruise missiles hitting buildings, big columns of smoke. I was like, I'm not even at front lines, but I guess I am. Train stations closed, everything's closed. No, I got nothing else to do. And then what? The Children's Hospital? Oh, I'm going. And the Ukrainian firefighters, heavy, light rescue do a good job. They just need to get there in some time. And the Felcher paramedics, I have many friends that work on the ambulances there, took over and did a really good job. And that's the oldest and biggest children's hospital in all of Ukraine for 100 years. So I would hope, and I'm sure SBU will put that at the top of his atrocity list, because there is nobody in there except patients and hospital staff, of which we lost over 30 as soon as it hit. You may know that cruise missiles go to supersonic speed, so they're kind of hard to shoot down by our air defense, and they're expensive. So he spent a lot of money destroying a children's hospital. And I got to carry on. I didn't even know their main specialty is cancer, children's cancer, which is more prevalent in Ukraine, probably anywhere else because of Chernobyl. And I carried out 2 kids that couldn't walk under their own, not because they were bombed, but because they had radiation, chemo, and all that, and got them out and took care of a lady that was crushed by concrete for a little while. And then the real guys showed up, and as Ukrainians do, they did a very good job. So I'm in no more danger than any Ukrainian walking down the street when I go there.
We want to reiterate where you can contribute to the House of Ukraine. Since the beginning of the war, the House of Ukraine has been soliciting donations for various tactical medicines, such as tourniquets, blood clotting bandages, and chest seals. They put together over 2,000 individual first aid kits and gotten them delivered to various defenders in need, including firefighters and search and rescue teams who often get overlooked and undersupplied. Currently, they are working with Ukrainian, American, and other NATO tactical combat casualty care trainers in Ukraine who do courses for soldiers, combat medics, combat medical doctors, EMS personnel, search and rescue workers, and volunteers. They are raising money for tactical tourniquets, combat gauze, decompression needles, surgical airway, and blood transfusion kits. So the Musical Innertube will put the House of Ukraine link on our webpage. You can go there and contribute to this very worthy cause.
Jakuyu Yoan, which means thank you very much. One more plug, if I could, on political things. Contact your congressman, Democrat, Republican, whatever, and ask them to push for Ukraine to have the ability to attack further into Russia. They have gotten approval for Kursk, apparently. There's certain places we can hit that are all bombers and MiGs and all that other stuff. But Zelensky is very careful not to tip the scales. So we need more support for defending themselves in places that are attacking them. It's pretty critical. We won the battle by squeaking it out with a $61 billion. Even some Republicans voted for that, one of which was Congressman Crenshaw, who, like the other 4 SEAL congressmen, initially said, oh, no, we're not going to spend another dime on Ukraine. And they finally figured out, you better be careful what you vote for, because it'll go down in history. So your congressmen, if they are doing their job, understand that these votes that they put into Congress will not just be a flash in the pan in history. It will go down in history on who supported Ukraine and who did not. So contact your congressman, tell them stand with Ukraine, and specifically, at least during this year, push for allowing President Zelensky and the Minister of Defense to do the strategic things they need to do to eliminate the Russian threat. They don't go in and bomb civilian communities like the Russians do. They do it very deliberately, and they normally go after military targets, but everybody's saying, oh, we want to be careful how we talk to Putin and all that stuff. So call your congressman and tell them, when you say you're standing with Ukraine, you need to put some oomph behind it.
Well, Mykhaylo, thank you very much.
And thank you for listening to the Musical Innertube.
Hey, let us know how we're doing. Send us an email at musicalinnertube, all one word, @gmail.com.
Do you know someone with a great story to tell? Let us know. Send us an email or log in to our website, musicalinnertube.com, and click on the microphone in the lower right-hand corner to leave us a voicemail.
And while you're on our website, take a few minutes to listen to past episodes of the podcast. They're all there, along with pictures and biographies of our guests, blog posts, and lots more.
And as always, our thanks to virtual band Car Radio Dog for providing us with our theme music.